So I'm going to get started now. If anyone joins, that's fine. You can just join whenever, but we're going to get started. So thank you so much for joining our webinar today, What Black Talent in Tech Really Want You to Know. And just want to give you guys a heads up on who I am. So my name is Shola. And fun fact, I actually was a digital marketing apprentice at WhiteHat, and I'm now in the B2B marketing team. And I am no longer an apprentice. I actually finished my apprenticeship in April, so in the heart of lockdown. So I'm really excited to be facilitating this discussion today. Personally, this panel really resonates with me as I am a Black woman in tech and I also was an apprentice. So I'm hoping you guys are going to enjoy this panel discussion and our keynote speaker as much as I will today. So what we're going to be discussing is the Black Lives Matter movement and how that really sparked a crucial dialogue within the workforce. And it's important that we have these conversations around race and ethnicity in the workplace so that we don't lose momentum and that we're really listening and learning from, the different Black colleagues and their experiences. Before we get into that, I want to introduce Temi Nelson at PwC. She will be our keynote speaker. So I'm just going to give her a brief intro and then I'll hand over. So Temi has been in IT for 25 years in various sectors, including retail, investment banking, local gov, professional services at PwC, doing everything from web design to project, program management, to agile service delivery. Temi has also been a life coach for 20 plus years and leads the coaching PwC UK IT. Temi's mission is to use her own authenticity and strength to empower people to have the courage and resilience to let themselves shine, which is amazing. So Temi, over to you for your keynote, because that was just a really good intro.
Yes. Thank you very much for that, Shola. Thank you, everybody. It's hard for me because I can't see people, and so I'm just going to imagine your faces there. I hope you're really well and coping during lockdown. I was asked to join this panel just yesterday, actually, and have kind of scrambled together to have some answers for you around some of the questions that I've been asked, and really I'm really interested in your perspectives as well, but I would just speak from my perspective. So one of the first things that I was asked about was around the challenges that people might see around addressing diversity and inclusion. So I'm responsible for setting up diversity and inclusion within PwC UK IT. So that became something that I saw as being more important because I would recognize that I was always one of one. I have always been one of one, and was really keen to make sure that I changed that. And I do everything in my daughter's name. She's only 11, but I do everything in her name, and in a bid for the world to be a different place by the time she grows up. But the first thing is, but why be diverse and why include? The bottom line is, as employers, the way I always look at things is that I personally spend my money where I see diversity. Simple. I spend my money where I see diversity. When I see diversity, such as, for example, with ASOS. ASOS is a company, fashion brand, and I would always see diversity in shapes and sizes. And then one day I went onto the ASOS website and I saw a lady who was a beautiful Black woman, bald head, dressed to the nines, and she was an amputee. And she was stood there looking amazing. And for me, at that moment, I had decided that I will be loyal to that brand. And that's the bottom line. Why do it? That's why we do it. We do it because we want to see ourselves. And I know I spend money where I see diversity. So it's really great to have people on here who are prepared to even look into this and start to discuss it and see where there are opportunities. So one of the questions that I've been asked is around what might be one of the challenges at the moment. So the challenges at the moment, we talked about Black Lives Matter, is that some employers may see this as a bit of a bandwagon, jumping on a bandwagon, a lack of sincerity around it. And there might be consumers and or people that you're working with who may see it in the same way, a bit of insincerity around it. But it's all about leveling that playing field whilst still being fair. And that's another challenge that people have. And looking at ways to do that whilst it's also a big part of what you believe in as your company and what we believe in as wider society. So what does a truly diverse and inclusive culture look like to me? So to me, and this is purely to me, it's about all levels of the organization. So all levels of an organization, inclusions across those levels. So that means the younger people, the older people, all genders, and the collaboration that then takes place as a result of that. The feeling of family, and understanding that as a family, we are all different. You have family members that you get on with, and you've got family members who you begrudgingly invite to your wedding, but really you don't really like them that much. But you are collaborating, you are still a family. And it's those opportunities to collaborate that create that diversity and inclusion, and the culture that can come with that. And also recognizing that diversity is strength. So not just diversity in ethnicity, that's one way, and definitely incredibly important, but in other areas too. So thinking about diversity of thought. So the benefit of different learning styles and different abilities, different ages. So I talk about learning styles. I'm a highly visual learner. So I do mind maps. I don't write in notes in traditional ways. I don't share information in traditional ways. I'm slightly different. In PwC, in UK IT, we're working with a company called Auticon, which is an IT consultancy that, you know, specifically employs people with autism and on the autism spectrum. And looking at definitely the diversity in that and the strength in that diversity is excellent. Companies like UK Black Tech, another company that then focuses on employing Black tech and making sure that there are opportunities there as well. So when you talk about a diverse culture, to me also looks like having the best people for the job. So not just employing people by traditional methods. So not just looking at what level of education have they got a degree, have they been to university, what's their accent like, their gender, their ethnicity, again. And I talk about things like accent. I'm from South London, I'm a very proud South Londoner, and I speak with a bit of slang every now and then, and it's deliberate because that's who I am, and I don't want to switch off who I am. I want to be authentic, because some of our customers come from South London. They have a South London accent. Why should we not actually connect with them instead of actually switching off those parts of ourselves? So assume that customers are diverse because your customers are diverse. So therefore, as a result, it's important that we have diversity to represent. And look for people who have survived the most. So again, one of the things that companies don't always do is look at things in terms of the strength that is necessary to get through life. So when we're employing people, we often look at the experience, and we look at the education, especially young people, education being one of them. But actually, the education that comes from being a carer for your parents or a parent, having to juggle the budget of the family, looking after your younger siblings. These are all skills. And often what happens is people don't look at those skills and make the decision that that is worthy of an opportunity. Yeah, looking at the skills of young people who went to the worst school in the area and got the best results. That's comparable to somebody who maybe went to the best school and got average results. Yeah, there are lots of ways we can look at these things, but these are ways that we could make decisions to actually look at diversity differently. Yeah, looking for people for whom English isn't their first language. English is my first language, my only language, with South London. But as it's my first language, what it means for me is that I can just have a conversation. I can see something written down and I can understand it. But actually, for someone for whom English isn't the first language, they have to translate that. So they read it, they translate it, maybe read it and understand it in their first language, then they translate it back into English, then they have to replay it. That's a level of intelligence that is worthy of being acknowledged. And that happens really quickly, and people don't think about that. That's another way that we can look at diversity and look at the opportunities we can give people with diversity. So another question I was asked was around what great things around apprenticeships have gone on for me. So my history is that I worked in local government, London Borough of Lewisham, and I was responsible for onboarding our first set of ever technical apprentices. And we ended up in my year, a couple of years that I had them, I had 10 apprentices, and they would all start with me and then they'd go off to different parts of IT. And the first thing I did was look at potential. And it was the best thing that I've ever done, because I had 16 to 24-year-olds, mainly men, a couple of women, which if I could have done something about, I definitely would have. But they were all young men, and mainly young men, and they came in with all varying levels of energy. Some were really laid back, some were really enthusiastic, but what they all had, especially the ones that we recruited, they all had potential. And one of the things that doesn't happen a lot, again, is that people are employed based on potential. And that's where we need to be with this kind of thing, is looking at the potential. So my apprentices were project apprentices. So they were doing project coordination, doing non-complex projects, things like that. And there were also others doing technology, more technology service apprenticeships. And they were looking after the mobile phone service and hardware services and maybe doing some data related roles. Of the 10 that we employed in that first cohort, we kept 6 of them within London Borough of Lewisham, and that wasn't the plan. The plan was they would do our apprenticeships, they'd have skills and they'd go off. But they were so good that we ended up keeping so many of them. And years down the line, you know, some of them are data managers in governance and contracts. And the one that stayed with me the longest, he's now program manager. And at the time that I left London Borough of Lewisham, he was on the same grade that I was. So he was excellent. And he was somebody who had had a past, who had been a professional footballer, very young, done really well for himself, had an injury, lost his way, and came back into education. And again, me going back to that piece around resilience. So what you'll often find with people who are apprentices is that their resilience is excellent, because maybe somewhere along the line, maybe slightly earlier along the line, things didn't quite work out for them. And by sheer fact of the fact that they're in front of you means that they have resilience. And resilient employees are excellent employees because they can adapt and change and bounce back. So there's a real benefit to that. And some of them ended up, as I said, staying at London Borough of Lewisham. Some went to our third-party service provider, Capita, and others went to Lewisham Home. So we had some excellent results with apprenticeships. And it's one of the best things I've ever done in my career, ever. So one of the things that I was asked to mention was about Black Lives Matter. It's come up a lot, but there can often be a lot of talk and no action. And what can employers start to do today to make the organisations more inclusive? So the first thing that I would say is, what are you trying to achieve? What's the vision? What is that vision for you? What is it that you want to have? What do you want your organisation to look like? And to be clear in that. So as a coach, that's about your goal. That's about your mission statement, and thinking about those things and being really clear about that. And then aligning that to your values. What are the values of your organization? You know, so I chose PwC based on the values of the organization. It wasn't just PwC selecting me, I selected PwC, and I looked at the values of that organization, and that, as a values-based person, resonated with me. So adding diversity and inclusion into your values is a really great way to give the sign to people that actually you take this seriously and that you want to do something about it. So adding it to your job adverts, being open and being bold in that. And then when it comes to the recruitment piece, you know, panels, making them diverse. You know, you've got to see it to believe it. So making your panels diverse, doing unconscious bias training for any interviews panels. So any members that are on a panel, go through that unconscious bias piece. Look for bias scanners. You can get them online that scan your adverts and look for the language that you use. For example, women who find adverts that talk about things being fast-paced and dynamic. If you're a parent, a mother, you're less likely to go for that role, because there's a connotation that says, actually, I'm going to need you 24/7. And actually, if I've got that family commitment, perhaps I won't want to do that. And I imagine men are the same, but certainly for women. And then again, going to that piece around potential. So a point based on potential, not just experience. You know, looking at somebody and thinking, actually, I can see that they will grow. I can see that they will learn. And actually, you know what? I might learn from them too. And thinking about that when we are looking at what we can do right now. And that's something we can do right now, looking at existing talent and making those decisions. So also I'd say to flank your talent. So flanking your talent to me is about the mentoring, coaching and sponsorship piece. So the mentor who speaks at you, the coach who speaks with you, and the sponsor who speaks about you. And thinking about flanking your talent. And I'm talking about your existing talent and also any new talent that comes in, including apprentices. And sponsorship is really important. So sponsorship is saying, I identify you as talent. I identify that existing talent, and I'm going to support you to be on the path to greater things. And that sponsorship is key. That's the difference between mentoring, coaching, great, I'm a coach, but sponsorship is the thing that actually says, actually, I'm going to go on this journey with you, and we know where we're trying to get to. Another piece is around fair access to work. So creating an open and transparent space for opportunities. So in PwC, in UKIT, we have something called the opportunities log. So every opportunity that's available goes into that log. And then it's looked at by people who have gone through unconscious bias training, who are looking at things from a fair perspective. So having some kind of mechanism that helps you to look at fair access to work and opportunities, not just, I know this person's really great and they'd be awesome on it, let me give it to them, but actually looking broader than that and looking at your talent and looking at things differently and not just within the sphere of what we know already. That's what has got us where we are now. Creating open spaces for your talent to question, learn and grow. Again, really, really important. Coaching circles, one-to-one coaching, things like that. But also forums in which you can have open conversations about diversity, inclusion, where it's working, where it isn't. And being really brave in having those conversations, really listening to how that can impact your people and how it can make them feel like part of a family. And also, finally, fail fast. So creating a fail fast culture. So I've got that within my team. The premise within my team is that we get a volume of work coming in from the business. They come in via tickets. An example is that a ticket comes in, somebody picks up that ticket and says, I want to have a go at this, but I'm not sure. So the premise is you pick it up, you give it a go. You can't do it, you bring it back. There is no failure. And if there is, it's failing fast. The failure is not to speak up. So it's to try. And using that agile methodology is to use that as organizations in things that we don't quite know what to do about, is to try it. And if it doesn't work, let's have a conversation. What didn't work? What do we think we want to do differently? Instead of looking at perfection, but looking at all of these things as an opportunity to grow and change. And just before I wrap up, I honestly cannot speak highly enough around apprenticeships and the opportunities that they provide. I can't speak up enough for all of the young people who are brave enough to put their names down for apprenticeships. As I said, often there's a story behind why somebody has become an apprentice, especially the older they are. And it would be great if more and more organisations supported that. And that's it. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Temi. That was amazing. And it really got me thinking a lot because you mentioned so many good points. And I particularly liked the part where you were talking about apprentices often being really ambitious and we're judged by our potential and our intent. And I know that's something that WhiteHat definitely looks for when they're hiring for apprentices. So that was great. Thank you so much for that. And I hope everybody else really learned something and took something from that because I know I did for sure.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. So now we're going to actually move on to our incredible panelists who are also apprentices, which leads on so nicely. And they've all, pursued a career in digital and tech. And we're so proud to have them as part of our WhiteHat community. So if you guys could please introduce yourselves, starting with name, job title, and company. And we'll go Fatima, Eric, and then Blue.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I recently started at Depop as a junior iOS developer. So on an apprenticeship from WhiteHat.
Amazing. Thanks, Fatima.
Hey everyone, my name is Eric and I'm doing a software engineering apprenticeship at WhiteHat.
Awesome.
Hi everyone, my name is Blue and I'm doing the data fellowship apprenticeship at a company called Ipsos MORI, which is a market research company.
Thank you, all of you. So I'm looking forward to talking to you guys in a bit, but before I do, I just want to jump in and talk a little bit about WhiteHat so that everybody watching can understand why we're running this panel event today. So at WhiteHat, we create a diverse group of future leaders by building an outstanding alternative route to university through our apprenticeships. And we work with some of the most exciting UK companies to deliver our apprenticeships, including digital marketing at Google, software engineering at Sky. And we help companies by plugging skills gaps in data science and project management by upskilling existing staff. So we believe that WhiteHat will play a vital role in solving the UK skills gap problem and addressing inequalities in pay and opportunity and challenging wider societal perceptions surrounding apprenticeships and how you access the best careers. So what I'd like to do is start this first segment off with trying to get to know you guys a little bit more and getting, the audience to understand you guys a bit more. And then later on, we'll move on to the segment a bit more around D&I. So if that's good with you guys. And quickly to remind everyone, please do use the chat function and the Q&A function throughout. We will have time at the end to look at the questions, but if something comes to your head, just put it in whenever. So I'm going to start off with you, Blue. Can you tell us a bit more about what inspired you to actually get into the tech industry?
So during school, I really enjoyed math lessons. Like, I love maths. I find it a lot easier to work with like numbers than like writing and like writing essays and stuff. So yeah, and like my favorite thing from maths lessons was to get a solution back from like a teacher or from someone else and trying to find a way to kind of simplify it and make it as easy to read and as easy to follow as possible. I also like really enjoy working in an industry that's kind of like current and you're always learning in tech because it's always changing. So yeah, I feel like school and kind of liking the constant learning is what kind of got me interested in tech.
No, I love that answer. Yeah, I could definitely say I'm in tech. I didn't enjoy maths, but it's good that you do because we need people to enjoy maths. So Eric, how about you? What inspired you to get into tech?
Yeah, so as I was growing up, I think modern technology was really only just beginning. And so growing up, I kind of got to see it evolve to what it is now. And I was using computers from a very young age, and they've always interested me a lot. And I think the next step after using something a lot, you want to start to understand what makes it tick and what makes it work. And that's kind of what made my interest for technology, just blossom. And I really wanted to find out more about it. So in school and in college, I really prioritized the technology subjects like IT. And it was in college where I actually decided that I wanted to go in the software engineering field after I did a programming module in my IT course. Yeah.
Amazing. We're so lucky to have you at WhiteHat. So all your talents. And Fatima, I know with you, you actually participated in the Tech Talent Accelerator. And just for anyone who doesn't know what that is, TTA is a program for young Londoners who are not in education, employment or training and facing barriers to employment, but they have demonstrated passion for tech and coding through a rigorous application process. And there were actually 321 applicants and only 25 places, which Fatima got in, which is amazing. So Fatima, could you tell us a bit about your experience on the Tech Talent Accelerator program?
Yeah, sure. It was an amazing learning experience because we have to start from the basics of software engineering and what it means really on a daily basis to become a software engineer. So it challenged me, but also kind of filled me with knowledge and even more enthusiasm for the tech world. So I definitely enjoyed it. And yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And now you're at Depop, so I can see how it must have really benefited you largely. And I'm keen to understand a bit more about what you guys are enjoying the most when it comes to your roles and at your organizations. So starting with Blue, what is something you're enjoying the most currently or throughout?
So I really enjoy like working with people that have a lot more experience than me. I've only been on my apprenticeship for about 7 months. So yeah, I really like learning off people that have been in the field for like a lot longer than I have. And even just like learning like little things, like little Excel tips. I think like, yeah, I really enjoy like learning the little things that make everything kind of a little bit easier to follow, a bit more efficient to work with. So yeah.
Amazing. Eric?
Yeah, so for me, it's quite similar. I think the thing that I enjoy the most is collaboration.
Yeah.
And for me in particular, it's programming, and it's quite amazing to me to see how collaborating with something as intricate as, you know, programming,
Yeah.
you're able to work together to create like a really beautiful result. And the possibilities are really endless, and I think that's really fascinating. So collaborating with other people and I guess figuring things out and getting things to work is something that really, you know, motivates me.
Yeah.
Amazing. And Fatima, just lastly, you for that question.
I would say similar to both of them, but on top of that, also being able to kind of create, learn to at this point, because I recently started, so I'm not down into the deep end yet, but learning to create innovative solution that our users can start using straight away. So seeing that you're actually making an impact by creating a technological solution to someone else's life, and the earning power income, and also the impact they're making, especially at Depop on a fashion waste challenge. Or so, yeah, definitely creating innovative solution. That's something that I'm quite excited about in my role, on top of everything else: collaboration, learning, and teamwork.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot from all of you. So that's amazing. So now I guess the audience know a little bit more about you guys, your stories, your journeys. And I really want to touch on the subject of D&I now. So we should know, or I know, that to push diversity and inclusion, we do need to see support from leaders and senior members if we really want to see true change and we really want to see the needle moving on that front. And due to this, there is a need for constant education at board level and having webinars like this, etc., so that companies can focus on their long-term strategy for change. And at a personal level, I think where I've seen companies go wrong is they tend to focus a lot on one and not the other. And it's usually diversity. So diversity is, you know, your background, your gender, race, sexuality, you know, all of that. And then the inclusion is about how you're made to feel in that environment. And I think a lot of the time I don't know if it's easier, but it might be easier, I guess, to have loads of diversity, but then not actually think about the culture and then how those people feel. And the problem is, if that isn't correct, it can lead to bad retention. So it's something that you do need to get right, and you know, both of them do need to be important. So that actually leads me nicely onto my first question in this segment, and I'm going to aim this at Eric. What does a true inclusive culture mean to you?
Yeah, so I think a truly inclusive culture recognizes differences between everyone in every aspect. So that's whether it's the background, beliefs, or really anything else. When differences are recognized, it makes all the difference. And so for me, to give a little bit of a background of myself, I'm half Nigerian and I'm half Polish as well. So I was actually born in Poland, and I started my education there. And so for me, it was quite difficult because although I grew up in a quite small town, and my school had about 300 students, which is not a lot, me and my siblings were the only people of color in the entire school. And that made it quite difficult to fit in. But at my age, it was actually quite easy. I found that, you know, communicating with other children, it was natural to kind of not see the differences in color between ourselves. Whereas my siblings have experienced, you know, racism not from students, but also from teachers as well. And I think what I think my opinion on that is what the school failed to do is kind of recognize differences
Yeah.
between us, and try to implement an environment where we could work together and kind of not point out the differences. Yeah, and I think after moving to the UK and seeing how such a diverse culture is able to, you know, work together, it really shows how much of a difference putting in the effort to recognizing it makes.
Yeah, no, definitely. Great answer. And I liked when you spoke about when you were younger, you didn't really see the color difference. And a lot of people do say racism is taught, because when you are younger, you don't really, you might see it, but it's not really a big deal to you. And it's only when you hear maybe from, I don't know, your granddad or someone older who are putting kind of words into your head, that's when it becomes a thing, like a real thing that you actually acknowledge. And does anyone else on the panel want to jump in on that in terms of what an inclusive culture looks like to them? Blue, Fatima?
I would say maybe providing more learning and development opportunities. So once you recognize potential and you hired talent based on potential, you hired actually the potential because you can't see the talent yet, give it opportunities so that that potential can be turned into real talent, so that both you and the employees can benefit from that. So don't just hire based on your diversity policy or tick box exercise, but actually invest into those employees so that they can grow with you and the company. So.
Yeah, that is such a great point. I do see a lot of companies doing it like a tick box exercise, like you mentioned, where they might do some sort of maybe intern scheme for a certain race, but then if you look at their senior leaders in the company, there's no one of color. And it's really important that you are investing in that talent and allowing them to grow, not just hiring in quickly as a tick box exercise. And I want to talk a bit more about the whole Black Lives Matter movement and how that really has translated into the workplace. And at the time when it was really like happening, a lot of companies released statements of support or put out, you know, the Black Square on social media. But for some people, that felt like it was a lot of words over actions. And this question's for you, Blue. Like, what do you think companies can start doing today to improve and ensuring that it is actions over words when it comes to things like Black Lives Matter movement?
I feel like the main problem is a lack of knowledge. So I'd say just like educating their employees, having like sessions which might be thought of as uncomfortable, but like having those conversations.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. At WhiteHat, we did that. So whilst Black Lives Matter was going on, there was obviously Blackout Day. And what we did was we took out an hour. So we made our own thing. We did Blackout Hour, where we basically encouraged all members of staff to take out an hour to either educate themselves, which the D&I group sent out resources, or go and watch something or talk to someone. So I really agree with your point in terms of education is really important and imperative. And kind of moving on from that, diverse talent can be selective, and I can speak for myself on that, about the companies that you want to join. So I know that if I was ever to look at a company that I want to work for, I would go straight onto their page. I think Temi actually mentioned this, but on their page where they have, you know, like the team and everyone's photos. And if I was scrolling for a while and I saw no one that looked like me, for me, that would be kind of an automatic no-go, because I don't want to be the only person like me, because that does come with challenges. And this question is for you, Fatima. So what would put you off an organization, or if that one's not the best kind of way of wording it, what would excite you to join an organization? So for example, I've just mentioned looking on the page and seeing no one like me would be like a no-go. Is there anything for you that would be like a no-go, or something that would excite you?
I would start with a good one. What would excite me is obviously first, do like you say, go online and check out the company, but also now as young Black people, we are quite well organized in groups and everything and networks, and we kind of ask other young Black professional working in that company or dealing with that company. We kind of get feedback from internally within the community, but also seeing the type of leadership the company is working with, or evolving, or even taking on a public stage. Not only the buzzword, okay, we are diverse and inclusive, but actually follow the actions they take in, the initiative they associate themselves with, and understand really what they say is actually the work they do. So those things will, and also a company that can encourage initiative, no matter for anyone, being Black or no Black, but a company that can drive employees to kind of take their own initiative, to put forward ideas, and then to kind of be agent of change within the company. That would excite me. What would put me off? I would say the lack of flexibility, or the lack of innovative thinking or leadership. If people still have like set cultures that they are not so keen to change and or adapt, that would be definitely a no-go area for me.
Yeah, I can agree. And Eric, what about you? Is there anything that would put you off or something that would excite you about joining an organization?
Yeah, I think one thing that could put me off is kind of unrealistic expectations to how what kind of person I am, or expecting me to act in a certain way before you have really had the opportunity to meet me as a person. I feel like that kind of, puts me in a position where I have to change the way I am usually, in order to have a, feeling of belonging in a company. And I don't think that anyone should have to do that. So definitely that. I'd say another thing is maybe like organization where it feels like the community is kind of closed off to you, or as you said, Shola, when you don't see anybody that's like you, and then you don't really find that much of a good opportunity to socialize with people because you don't feel like you belong. So yeah, I'd say those things stand out to me.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with you on that one for sure. And it actually leads on nicely to my next question, because I was going to talk around like the barriers for certain groups when you are trying to enter the tech sector. And I know that there's about 0.7% of Black women in the tech sector, and I'm proud to be one of those women. But there's a lot of times where you might feel a certain way. So you might either experience imposter syndrome, or you might feel the need to change your identity. That could be your accent or the way you dress. And I wanted to ask you guys, have you ever felt that way before in your career, where you felt like you had to change who you are, or do you know of someone that has had to change who they are to fit into the organization?
So can I jump in here, Shola, if that's all
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the term for that is code switching. And code switching is something that people of colour often feel that they have to do. I've been around for 20 years, and very early on in my career, I would have to code switch. I felt I had to code switch to be able to progress. And that's why my mission now is to encourage people to not have to. That actually, again, if we're talking about diversity, we're talking about having successful organizations, then it takes all sorts. So especially people of color, we are expected to act quote unquote Black. And if you're not Black, then you're something else, when actually we just are, we're just people. There's all sorts of Black people who have all sorts of different views. So code switching is something that definitely has impacted me throughout my career, but I've made that open choice to no longer do that. To know that if it's okay for my colleague to wear a Metallica t-shirt, it's okay for me to wear a t-shirt with a woman with a big afro on the front of it, that it's the same thing. If it's okay for my colleague to wear shorts and flip-flops, it's okay for me to put a hoodie on, or a baseball cap. That doesn't make me any less of a professional as a result. It's not always easy to do it. It's not always easy to feel okay doing it. But again, I feel a moral obligation to make sure that I'm saying to my colleagues that it's okay for me to be like this, and that I believe that they think that too. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. So that's all I wanted to say on that, Shola.
Thank you so much, Temi. I actually heard of the word code switching, and when I actually looked into it, I was like, that is a really great example of what a lot of people try to explain. And I completely agree with you. I'm lucky that I'm at a company where I can be myself, because everyone knows there's days where I'm going to wear a hoodie. There's days where, I might not be like this. For example, there's days where I might want to just use a bit of slang depending on who I'm talking to. That is necessary. And I think that is a great point, because like you said, if we're trying to aim at loads of different types of people, we can't all be the same. And that is needed for sure. So really good point. Thank you so much. And Blue, what about you? Have you ever heard of anyone that felt they need to change their identity, or maybe yourself, and what that experience has been like to fit in an organization?
Yeah, so I feel like when I first started at my company, it wasn't because of my company, it was just because like having the experience working, I was like really scared that my hair would be an issue. And people's hair is like a part of their identity. especially for like me anyways. So yeah, I feel like there are a lot of parts of people's identity that other people might not consider, that people have to change, or kind of they feel like they have to fit a mold, it shouldn't really be there. That also links on to like what you said previously about something that puts you off of a advert or like an Instagram page. If everyone fits the same mold, it really makes me feel like uncomfortable, and I kind of like turn away from working with them or like buying off them. So yeah, I feel like it is like really common, and sometimes it's unintentional as well, to kind of even think, oh, I should like have my hair like this, or I shouldn't say this, or yeah. I think it is like really common. So yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Apologize, guys, because it's just gotten really dark outside and it's rainy. It's like literally a storm. So I'm sorry, I'm going to turn on a light in a second. But to your point, Blue, that was really, really a great one, because as a Black woman, you can feel really insecure about your hair, because naturally for me, I change my hair all the time. And at first that could be really awkward, because you feel like everyone's probably going to be questioning you, like, why have you changed your hair? And that in itself goes back to the point I was making about inclusivity. And if you have an environment where people do feel included, that would be okay. So yeah, that's a great point. And Eric, anything else on that, or Fatima?
Yeah, I can add on to that. So generally, I think change is a good thing, but I think there is a clear difference between finding faults in yourself and wanting to change them as a way of improving yourself, and kind of taking things that you're already content with about yourself and feeling like you need to change them in order to, you know, fit in. And although there's a clear difference between them, I've seen people get the two mixed up before. And it shouldn't be that way. So yeah, I'd say that.
Okay. For me, this is quite something that I feel strongly about, because personally, I have felt inadequate so many times. I'm visually impaired. I wasn't born in the UK until 7 years ago. I wasn't speaking a word of English. I've been into the care system. So at some point I thought, okay, I'm definitely, I don't fit here. I'm not right for here. I need to change myself. And I realized quickly, I cannot change my past. I cannot change where I was born. I cannot change the fact that I'm visually impaired and English is not my first language. But I so wanted to kind of fit in that it took me almost like a mental breakdown to realize, hey, those things makes you a more valuable employee than actual drag to the company. So you're bringing, like Temi said, so much more enrichment to the company because of what you've been through, what you've dealt with, or how you have built up your personal resilience. So, and how the skills that you take throughout those obstacles, if you can call them like that. So I think it's quite important for employers and employees and every young people out there, Black, white, or to realize that your uniqueness is something that's valuable, is something that any company that is actually seeking to grow needs. So do not feel that is something that I'm not very kind of advocating for, even within my company or within my social network. It's something that you should never feel inadequate. You should never feel like you're not good enough, or you need to kind of twist a bit of you to kind of fit someone else's molds. Is dangerous. It can actually lead you to serious mental breakdown and sometimes even to suicidal thoughts. So be yourself and utilize everything that you've been through or you have learned to kind of become a better version of you. So this is a subject that I'm quite strongly passionate about. So yeah.
Yeah, that definitely comes across. Thank you so much, Fatima, for giving that advice to anyone watching who might be experiencing that. And I think one way that companies can really help with that is having networks such as, you know, a BAME network, or, you know, you can break that down even further depending on how many people of each area within that you have in your organization. But having networks like that are for those people, like a safe space where they can get together, you know, host events, discuss their challenges, etc. And I know this works because I actually created one for apprentices at WhiteHat that is still running, and it was really amazing to see the apprentices come with their challenges, but then get support from other people within the network. But it's also important for allyship as well, because we would host events such as, you know, for example, an Eid festival, where everyone could come and learn and understand. And that's a way how you, when I was talking earlier about the inclusivity piece, that's how you do that, because then that way you've got that safe space for those people, but then it's another place that anyone that can't relate to that network can then come and learn and grow, and just really important. So I think for anyone listening who may be struggling with how to get that sort of culture in the organization.
And also companies need to actually enable those networks. It's good to have a network, but if they don't have the space and the tooling and even the executive attention they need to kind of actually make real change to the experience of those employees, then the network will just be like another induction tick box item. We have this network, but because during the Black Lives Matter issues, I was having a lot of discussion with friends where within their company, there were a Black network, but when they go to the network feedback, oh, we can't access the executive leadership, we can't go all the way up, we cannot organize even like a discussion session, we don't have the budget, or we don't have the time, or whatever. So yes, have the networks, but also give them the tool, the space, and also the attention of the leadership team, so that they can actually do meaningful work with your employees.
Really great point. Yeah, literally, and mentioned at the beginning, for us to see change, it will take leaders and, you know, the senior people at the top of the business to have their buy-in and their support, because I can imagine that if the senior leaders aren't showing interest, then people, you know, across the organization might think, why should I bother spend some time going to this event today after work when the senior leaders aren't going and I have other priorities to work on? For example, I don't know, I've got a long to-do list that I could do, and they'll be thinking, well, the senior leaders aren't going, so I don't need to, and I've got work to do. Whereas if the senior leaders are present and they're really encouraging people to go, and they're saying, you know, we know that you've got a long to-do list, but this is really, really important. You do need to understand, for example, if it was Black Lives Matter, you do need to listen to this, you know, whether you've got to move things around or reprioritize, we want you guys to all be attending this webinar, for example. Then that is how you include that in that culture and inclusivity, what Fatima was saying. But it does come from the top, otherwise it will just be another tick box, like you mentioned, Fatima, which is a really good point, and I love that discussion. So my last question, I guess, for you all is, what would you like your employer to do more of to make you want to work for them for the next couple of years of your life? So where you guys are at now, what would your company do, or what are they doing that they need to continue doing to make you say, actually, I want to be here for the next 5 to 10 years? Starting off with Eric.
Yeah, so I think working at WhiteHat has been very relieving, because throughout my education in school, for example, throughout secondary school education, I feel like he never really heard too much about apprenticeships in my experience. Teachers always usually talked about university, and if apprenticeships were brought up, it was usually very brief. And in college, it's really the same thing. In general, I think university is always prioritized rather than apprenticeships. And so it can be discouraging to pick an apprenticeship when everybody around you is considering university more, because apprenticeships are still not really considered a norm, and it feels like you're going against the flow. And because of that, it's hard to determine if you are making the right choice.
Yeah.
And so when I started, working for WhiteHat, and I started doing this apprenticeship, I started surrounding myself with people who are also trying to do an apprenticeship, and other professionals who are encouraging applying for apprenticeships, and speaking about all the benefits that you can get from it. And only then did I start to realize that, in fact, I was making the choice that I wanted, I was making the right choice. It was what I wanted to do. And so what I would want, organizations to carry on doing and companies to carry on doing is kind of, take apprenticeships and realize that it's really a great alternative to university. And that way, many apprentices who put so much effort into going against the flow and deciding to do something else get the same opportunities as the people who went to university. Yeah.
That makes me really happy. As a former apprentice and now full-time employee, it's amazing to see so many more apprentices join WhiteHat and do so well like you, and just, yeah, it makes me feel really proud, to be honest. And what about you, Fatima?
I would say first, more learning and development opportunities, because I really want to be able to grow within my career pathway. Tech is my passion, and I decided to become an iOS developer. So that's where I actually see my career going in the next 5-10 years. And for that to kind of actually happen, I need my company to support my learning and development. So definitely that, if they want to keep me. And I would say inclusive and supportive leadership, because now it's great. I have a line manager or leaders that I can talk to, reach out, and they're quite supportive and nurturing. And I can see that that's across the board at Depop. And I think if that is something is continued, I would definitely stay longer, more than 5-10 years. So definitely supportive leadership, more learning and development, and then impact. I want my company to make an impact, to actually, no matter what's your field or your industry, even if you're in the hardcore financial or banking system, you can still make an impact. And even if that's to your shareholders, that's okay. But I want to see that whatever my role is doing, at the end, there is an impact, and I'm making something meaningful, something that maybe align with my values. But yeah, that's important. So, and at Depop, is unfortunate enough to see that the work I'm doing is contributing to help young creative start their own fashion business and actually contribute to reducing fashion waste in general. So yeah, the impact effect is there. So
Yeah, that's really good. I think learning and development is so important for, I guess, obviously anyone, regardless of like where you're from. So that is definitely something that would keep me as well. And Blue, I know you're having some connection issues, but if you can hear me, would you have a response to that? Don't know if you're there.
It like cut out a little bit, so I'm assuming you're asking me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say my company has been like really on board with like supporting myself and like other young people, and I think there is always room for improvement. However, I would prefer to like give an example of something they've done which has shown already their support. And so an example of that was last week I was given the opportunity to kind of present how the apprenticeship has been going for me and what I like think could be better, what really works for me. I think that was like really helpful because one, it gave me an opportunity to speak to people that are higher up in like the senior leadership team, and it also gave me a chance to kind of work on skills that aren't in my day-to-day role, which means that they are kind of helping me stretch myself, and they are looking to upskill me, and it's not just kind of there as like a criteria, but they don't really kind of check it properly. And I think as well, it was a good chance for me to collaborate with people and kind of hear what other people who aren't, they don't have like English as their first language, or who are also on the apprenticeship and also quite young. I think that was like a really good opportunity for us to kind of have our say and get some good feedback from like senior teams as well. So yeah.
I'm glad it's going well. I love the fact that you're able to present to people more senior, and I think stuff like that in the workplace is just amazing, and that's something I do love about WhiteHat. There is no hierarchy. You can literally speak to anyone, and that is again part of having that inclusive culture where everyone feels that they can fit in no matter what level or how old you are within an organization. Being able to access who you need, and having those sponsorships or mentorships is really important. But that's unfortunately all we have time for today. But I feel like we've had amazing discussion, and we had Temi's amazing keynote where I learned so much at the beginning. And thank you all so much for your insights and everything like that. I don't think there is any questions in the Q&A. So either that means that you guys are sleeping or we covered literally everything. And I think it's because we covered everything because it was such a great insight. So unless anyone has any questions, I'm aiming this at the audience, where you want to just put it in the Q&A or the chat. Yeah, I think that is it really from us. I'll just give you guys a couple of seconds to write any questions if you have any. No questions, what we thank you. And yeah, thank you everyone for watching as well.